All right, everybody, welcome back. 2015 Chevy 1500 6L80. The thing about this one, though, is it's two-wheel drive. So let's get it up, get it out. All right, here we are in the air. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, since there's no transfer case to put a tripod on right here, I'm going to put a tripod and a block of wood right on the back of this right here. I'm going to hold this transmission up. I'm going to take out this cross member, and then I'm going to disconnect everything else, starter, torque converter, bolts, everything, while I have this held up here, so that I'm not having to work around that jack that's on the floor and the legs and everything that are on the. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Get this cross member out of here, and then we'll go from there. All right, gonna take the transmission mount nut off. One nut. Then give this a little bit of up. Take the weight off the cross member. Just like that. Now take the bolts out of the cross member. 21. Wire all wrapped around here. Let this down a little bit, and then I'm going to get the exhaust out of here. All right, so now the cross member's out of the way. The next thing we got to do is get this exhaust out of here. So we're talking 3 15mm nuts up in there, 3 15mm nuts over here. Sometimes they come off, sometimes you got to heat them up. So we'll see how these go. Also, O2 sensor wire plug in. Okay, so on this side you got one here, and you got one right here. You got to take out this little clip and then take it apart. And then same thing over here. You got this one, which I already showed you, and then this one right here. It goes to this. So there's 4 O2 sensors, and I unplug those before I do anything else. Otherwise, you'll end up hanging it from them. All right, long extension, wobble 15. See if they come off. Unbelievable. Today's gonna be an easy day. So before I take all these loose, I'm going to get this back clamp off too. So these clamps either come off or they break. So I just twist it till either it breaks or comes off. If it breaks, you can just put a new bolt in it. If it comes out, great. All right, looks like this one's going to turn. After that's off, now we'll go back here to the other side. Wow. All right, that one actually rounded off the nut. All right, well, that one's going to take some heat. Just a little bit of heat. Still used a 15. Just used a better one that wasn't wore out on the inside. To the side. All right. After you get the exhaust out of there, you can see things really open up. So what we're gonna do now is, holy moly. Yeah, okay, we're gonna get that off of there right there, and we're gonna fix that later. Cooler lines, which I don't take off until the very end because it's gonna leak. This side, you got the main plug-in right here, which is just that white thing out of there, and wiggle, 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 wiggle. If it doesn't work, you gotta blow on it a lot. I got a video short about that. Side plate here, and then bell housing bolts, and then starter and torque converter bolts, but we'll get there. Yeah, that's supposed to have a bushing in it, which we'll get a new one and put in it to clip back on there. I'm going to take this little metal clip out here, push that little clip, slide the cable out, 10 millimeters right here to hold this brush. All right, so on this side, 10 millimeters and the plug. On this one, I'm thinking there's a little bit of a leak, so it might just come right out. Let's see. Oh, look at that. It just came right out. Sometimes those are a pain in the butt. And poke the vent tube up out of here with these 4 little prongs. Sometimes you do it with your fingers. It's easier to get them all pressed. All right, after you get all that stuff off of there, then what you're going to do is I take this whole shield off right here. So it's 4 15 millimeters. 1, 2, 6. 2, 4, 6, and then you can get to the crankshaft to turn the motor over after you take the starter off, which is up here. 2 13 millimeter bolts, take the starter out, just push it back and out of the way, and then you can get your torque converter bolts. Also, this plastic shield has to come off. There's a 10 right there, but I'll be able to show you better once this shield's off. All right, so now that that shield's off, you can see up in there good now. And pop that little piece out there, and then those 2 13s right there, and that 10 to take that shield off. All right, I lied. There's one more 10 millimeter right there in that heat shield. Okay, so I can't get this starter out of here. This is the first one like this I've ran into, but it's got an oil cooler block on the side of it that's directly behind the starter. And then also that plastic plug-in right there is hitting everything when I try to come back with it, so it won't come out far enough to get out of the bell housing. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is take that oil cooler block off the side of the motor so I can get that thing back. All right, so I took off this oil cooler and just kind of pulled it down out of the way. Now you can see, now my only problem is this. So I'm gonna see if I can twist and do something to get that thing out of there. At least pull it out of the bell housing enough to just hang it down. Oh, look at that. Okay. Wow. Okay, so you can see up in here, that heat shield right there was way over here. I bent that heat shield out of the way with a pry bar and was able to turn it just enough to put the back up first and then pull the nose down. So that's good enough. We just need to get the torque converter bolts, which are going to be right in there. So I turn the motor with the crankshaft right here, 15/16, and then take these out with a ratchet and an air ratchet. All right, so you can watch right up in there. Turn this crankshaft. Oh, there's one that came around there. I'm gonna put it about right there and see what it takes to get it out. Now we go to the air ratchet. Hopefully. There's going to be 3 of them. And sometimes if you just pull all the way to where the ratchet hits the block, and see, it'll pop loose without having to use the ratchet in the front. Sometimes you got to use the ratchet in the front. A little jerk action. Okay, make sure it's loose. It is loose. Okay, next thing we got to do is put a jack under the transmission finally and get this rear drive shaft out of here. And then we got belt housing bolts to rip out. A few of them have 13s that hold little brackets and dipstick tube. And we'll get this transmission out of here. All right, 4 11 millimeters to take those straps off. And if you flip the transmission into neutral, then you can turn this drive shaft when you need to. A little pry bar action. Pop this thing loose. Pull this thing out. Whoops. Okay, we got a bunch of nasty fluid that came out of the back. All right, so when your transmission fluid looks like motor oil, that's really bad. Cooked. So anyway, now that we got that drive shaft out of there, now we're just gonna let this down and then we can get to belt housing bolts. Now, on this one, there's gonna be a nut. You see that 13 millimeter nut, and then the bolt. That nut holds the fuel line bracket, okay? Then over here, of course, you have the dipstick one, and then there's going to be one on the very, very top. Let's see if I can, oh, there it is. Okay, so it's got a little plastic bracket on it, which I just pry off with a pry bar, and then it's got a 13 nut, and then the bracket, and then the bolt. And the rest of them are just regular 15s. And then the very last, we'll take that cooler bolt out and bracket off, because it'll leak too. Let's get this thing out of here. All right, 15 millimeters after you get all that off. You poke this dipstick tube up out of here. This bracket pulls off. That bracket pulls off. All right, well, it didn't move, so I guess let's see if we got to put a little pry on it. It sticks on those dowels, sometimes really bad. Also got this little plastic shield on the other side that sometimes you have to take off, and it helps you pry. Gives you a spot to pry. Well, this cross member on a two-wheel drive is just in the dang way. There we go, baby. Yeah. All right, last thing, cooler bolt. Leak. Now, we're going to pull back, come down, back, down, back. Clear the cooler lines. Like so. dipstick tube up out of there. Alright, dipstick tube stays up in there. And this comes down, you got your vent, which I'm going to pull off. Alright everybody, that's it. Transmission out, 2-wheel drive. There's a little less to it, but some things are a little different. So that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.